Thank you for staying with us. Now, Kenya's new disability law strengthens rights for people with disabilities by banning abuse, forced begging, and discrimination, while also ensuring fair access to healthcare, education, and public service. Now, it also recognizes neurodiversity and protects against harmful cultural practices. The law promotes inclusion through job quotas, tax breaks, caregiver stipends, and also accessible infrastructure. So it is also important now, or its impact now depends on strong enforcement and also public support. Now, on the conversation to unpack this, I'm joined by Paddy Onyango, member Caucus of Disability Rights Advocacy, CDRA in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much, Paddy, for joining us at this time.
It's a pleasure.
Now, the 2019 census records just 2.2% of Kenyans as living with a disability. Does this truly capture the scale of disability in Kenya, or are many Kenyans invisible to official statistics?
The correct position is actually not 2.5 or 2 million. It should be in the range of 6.5 million, because according to the World Health Organization, the population of the world of persons with disabilities is about 15%. If you extrapolate that to the current situation with 52 million people, then you can get the figure by 6.5 million. But we understand why that figure is some variation, because the 2019 population census used the Washington sets of questions, which were not adapted to our understanding in Kenya. For example, they were asking, are you feeling that you are a person with disability? If you ask me whether I feel about being a person with disability or whether I have difficulty moving, I am a person who suffered polio at the age of 2.5 years. So I use a caliper. But if you ask me whether I do, yes, I do, using the caliper and a walking stick. So when you ask me whether I have difficulty walking, I tell you no. Yes. So that is one problem we have.
Okay. Now, also according to reports, roughly 67% of persons with disabilities are impoverished, and also among those with severe impairments, 1 in 2 live below the poverty line. So the new law shifts from a welfare model, to a rights-based framework. Can you explain what this means for persons with disabilities in Kenya?
Now, I think that a little background there will help us, because disability as a concept is evolving. First, it started as, what you rightly said, a welfare model or a charity model, where persons with disabilities were seen as a problem to society, and therefore you have to design some kind of charity programs, welfare programs to take care of them away from society. But now, as time goes by, we have seen a situation where now we have moved from that welfare or charity model to medical model, where disability is seen as a disease, a sickness which needs medicine, or a health problem, a socio-economic problem. And now we have it as a human rights model. So in other words, persons with disability are first and foremost human beings on equal basis with others, and are entitled to all rights due to other persons in society. So that is the paragraph that I wanted to give. And then in terms of the impact, I think we have moved a long way. And this law, it has taken us about 30 years or so to come here. Many steps, many trials, many disappointments, many failures, but we, as a movement in Kenya, we have moved on in spite of those, and therefore, the group or the disability movement in Kenya worked so hard to ensure that their issues are incorporated as principles in the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Now, that gave us the leverage now to move from the models that, that I have described.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a change, and it is a good change. It is phenomenal, and we are happy about that. Now, the challenge will be, I think we'll discuss this later, is how then do we implement this so that the gains in this law, in the Constitution, are actually felt by persons with disability around Kenya.
Okay. Well, congratulations to people living with disabilities in Kenya on that. Now, also, let's talk about some of the, fines that have been stated in the law. The Act actually imposes fines of up to 2 million Kenyan shillings, for discrimination. How effective do you think that these penalties will be in changing societal attitudes and behaviors, towards people living with disabilities?
As we have said, the model that we have adopted in our Constitution and in this law is that one of human rights. We do not want the law to be compared as such by fear of the law to integrate persons with disability, to violate the rights of persons with disability. It should be a responsibility that comes out automatically, that is not compared by the law. But our experience shows that you need a legal framework to make that possible. And therefore, the various penalties that are incorporated in the law.
Since it's a rights issue now,
yes, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. I'll just,
yes.
reiterating what you said.
Okay. So the another example is the rights of women with disability. The use of derogatory language or spiteful language towards women with disability. And it is common knowledge, for example, if a woman with disability gets pregnant and goes to hospital for antenatal clinic, what you will find most nurses or doctors, medical practitioners do is they spite her. They ask her, even you are engaging in these things, not remembering that this is a human person like them. So things like those, there are certain categories of penalties or fines, including jail terms, where the rights of persons with disability are derogated from.
All right, now just to reiterate that particular one, the law has actually guaranteed free medical care in public institutions for persons with disabilities. And in fact, medical professionals who neglect or discriminate against people with disabilities face up to 2 million Kenyan shillings fine as well, or even jail term, just like you said. But do you think that this would actually shift attitudes in healthcare, or do we need a deeper cultural change? Because you said that sometimes, these people forget that these are also human beings.
The way we are approaching this is multi-pronged. There is the law, and the most important thing that we need to work on, and we've been working on over the years, which of course made us arrive where we are with this law, is attitudinal change, behavioral change towards the way the Kenyan society perceives persons with disability. Rather than, as I said, rather than use the law to compare, let the appreciation of the totality of the humanity of persons with disability be appreciated by society without being compared. So part of the things that we are going to do is to emphasize the need for attitudinal change, behavioral change by our fellow citizens in Kenya.
Attitudinal change is very important. Now, what about when it comes to employers? They are now required to reserve at least 5% of jobs for persons with disabilities, but we see a recent survey, that found less than 1% of 404 public institutions, not being compliant or being compliant, just 1%. So why do you think these practices, falls so far so far short of the promise, and how can compliance be ensured?
First of all, the previous law, the law that has been changed, was not as emphatic as this law. The law that has been changed did not have the constitutional backing in Article 54 of the Constitution, which demands the at least 5%. So it is both constitutional and now it is legal. Then also there is a policy which is in place which will require that these opportunities are granted to persons with disability. That of course is dependent on many things. For example, the performance of the general economy. If the economy is performing well, then of course employers, both in public and private, will be able now to get more, as they employ more people, 5% of those being employed on the total workforce must be persons with disability. Now, it is not just purity, because on the other hand, when a private entity, employed complying with the 5%, there are certain incentives which are given to those employers. For example, VAT, tax refunds, tax reliefs. So all these things, including, for example, I know there are things we have put there, like for example, taking care of a worker with disability and providing the things that he or she needs to really work to the fullest potential for that company or employer. Things like what we call technically we call it reasonable accommodation. For example, if I am blind, I will need to have computers like JAWS so that will speak to me as I write. Or if I am deaf, then I will need gadgets that will translate whatever is being said in news, whatever instructions are being given to me in text, so that I can see from sound, because I'm blind, I cannot listen, I can see the transition from voice to text, so that way I can be accommodated fully, so as a professional can work. So there is incentive. It is not just one way, just adversarial, just purity. There are also incentives to encourage employers to ensure that persons with disability are accommodated reasonably in our workplace.
All right, now let's talk about this very touchy one. We know this actually happens everywhere, where so many people cash out from, begging, forcing those living with disability to actually go out and beg. And this has actually been exploited by vulnerable Kenyans as well. Now, the law imposes fines of up to 2 million Kenyan shillings as well, and 2 years of imprisonment on those who coerce people with disabilities to beg. Now, on the ground, and I'm talking about in real life now, how enforceable is this ban against the so-called lords of beggars? Because if you look around, even the beggars are enjoying it. You've heard interviews where so many beggars have come out to say how much they make in a day, and sometimes it's even more than what public servants actually earn.
Those are some of the things that we are going to work with the government and investigative agencies. So far, this law puts pressure on the government to carry out proper investigations to ensure that those who are involved in this are held to account. So there will be programs, social programs, economic programs that will be put in place, and these are already in policy. What remains is just implementation. Now, this will, of course, create opportunities for persons with disability to move away from begging to actually earning a decent, dignified living. In terms of doing business, getting incentives, loans at zero rated terms for profit of it, so that is something that is going to work. We know it is possible. Then society should also help whenever they see persons with disability being exploited. It is the responsibility of all Kenyans to ensure that that doesn't continue. But we are confident under this law that will be a thing of the past, but it will take time for us to arrive there fully.
Okay. Now, after all said and done, everything, like you said, it's a good step and all that. People are happy about it, but you can't deny the fact that a lack of public awareness remains a major hurdle, because as it is, so many people have no idea that this law even exists, So are strategies being considered, in order to educate the public, and I'm talking about those living with disabilities as well as, the other public? Are strategies being put in place to be able to educate these people about the provisions of this law?
Yeah, already in the coming 2 weeks, there's going to be a special meeting on how to implement and how to actualize the gains that are in this law. No doubt there will be need, as I said earlier, for attitudinal change, change towards persons with disability. But you can't do that just by enacting a law. You have to explain, you have to go out there and create awareness using a very different model of communication with the broader society, so that they see persons with disability as part and parcel of society, who needs to be understood, who needs to be respected. So that therefore, with this law, with the policy and the programs that we hope will be seen in the coming 1 or 2 weeks, 2 weeks rather, will help. Now, one of the things that the disability movement in Kenya has proposed is the establishment of an implementation working team for this law. That has never happened before. Now, this time is going to be an implementation team comprising private sector, comprising government, comprising organizations for and of persons with disability, private sector, professionals, those people, in other words, people upon whom this law has weighed the greatest responsibility.
So what about public transportation systems? When it comes to public transportation systems, they actually remain very, very inaccessible, especially for those with disabilities. And the law has actually said that there will be 25% reimbursement scheme for vehicle modifications, so that they can actually reach operators and also align with the law's mandates. How will that be done?
There are certain, you see, the law gives a broader framework of doing things, but there will be regulations, which this will be discussed in the meeting I'm talking about, regulations on how exactly this law is going to be implemented. Part of that includes, for example, suggestions on what we call, for example, universal design. Already we have examples to work with. For example, the National Construction Authority in Kenya, which is responsible for approving building designs, have now standards on what we can call universal design. So when you want to build a house, or if you have built a house, there is a design that you're given. If you have built one, on how to adjust it to make sure it is accessible to persons with various categories of disability. If you are constructing a house, it cannot be approved without those universal designs in place. So it is possible. All we need is the will to do it.
Well, I really wish we had more time to discuss, on this, especially the fact that the Act proposes monthly stipends for caregivers of persons with disabilities, severe disabilities, and the Act recognizes the neurodiversity like autism as well, and so much more, even digital inclusion, which is very, very critical. But sadly, time is not on our side, and we really, really appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us on this. Paddy Onyango.
Maybe. Can I cut in short?
Okay, all right. One minute, please. 1 minute.
Okay. First of all, there's something special about this bill, this law. The struggle to have it has something to do with a woman. It started in 1992. We had a blind woman who started the journey with us. Now it has been concluded by yet another blind woman, Crystal Asi. That is something that I wanted us not to forget. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic.
Thank you for having me with you.
Women are definitely paving the way, and I wish more countries would actually adapt such proposals for persons living with disabilities in their countries as well. Thank you so much, Paddy Onyango, member Caucus on Disability Rights Advocacy, in Nairobi, Kenya. We appreciate you for your time.